Hello, our friend.
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
We are well. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for asking. Do you come in the love and the light of the one infinite creator?
We do, as do you.
I do. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for clarifying.
And what would you like to chat about this morning?
Well, we would like to discuss the situation that is occurring in Eastern Europe with the country that starts with a U, Ukraine.
Yes.
Yes. Most of your populace finds it very horrific, and it is. However, it's that particular population in that region is providing a tremendous stimulus for the rest of the globe to recognize that domination and subjugation by countries that have more wealth and more guns and weapons can be overcome.
Yes.
And they are very demonstrative in their compassion for one another. They're taking care of one another. And there is no, how should we say, robbing and looting and taking advantage of one another. Whereas, unfortunately, in your country, if a situation that is occurring there were to occur here, it would create a tremendous amount of chaos
Yes.
within the populace. So they are demonstrating that despite extreme conflict with another country, that there is resolution
Okay.
and that it can be overcome. But the best way that this is overcome is by having compassion for one another, by sharing food, water. Resources there are very scarce, as we are sure you are aware of.
Yes.
Very scarce. But they don't hoard it. Each family doesn't say, I have this is mine, you can't have it.
Right.
They share it.
Right.
So they have a tremendous elevation in awareness and consciousness that they are demonstrating to the world. That despite conflict, you can still be compassionate and kind and thrive. Places like in Africa, the small tribes,
Right.
they do the same thing. They have, from a developed country standpoint, they are inferior, very tribal, limited, but their consciousness level, and we have discussed this in the past,
Yes.
it is elevated to the point where they don't hoard food. They don't want to see their friends or neighbors become ill or sick or starve. And so this is now translating, this level of consciousness and awareness and kindness towards others is translating into the Eastern European region, which has been very suppressed by service to self for millennia. And the bald man who's short, who's kind of domineering in the our country, Russia.
Russia. Yes. Putin.
Yes.
Mr. Putin.
Yes, that individual. He is losing grasp on things, and his consciousness continues to decline,
Okay.
which is going to lead to more chaos. However, the people that work for him, they're in the uniforms and they march down the street.
He's
and,
military.
yes, those individuals, they are becoming aware of his poor intentions. And we see a potentiality, as we have said in the past, we don't predict the future, but we see a potentiality for those individuals to say no,
To revolt.
to revolt, not on a violent level, but to revolt. And this will send a huge signal to the populace that is fearful of that individual, the Putin man.
Right.
And so they will see that people that are devoted to him,
Right.
that work for him, if they can say no, then they can say no. But they need that stimulus in order to do that because they live in such fear and chaos. And this is true throughout the world. This is not a unique situation to Russia. This occurs in places like your Indonesia, your places like Italy. So it's a global phenomenon. But some group has to step up and say no, even though they are impoverished, they do not have the weaponry, they do not have the monetary assets to support them in that endeavor. It will show the rest of the world that it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the populace that needs to overcome that fear in order to change their political system, their monetary system, and create more equality
Mm-hmm.
between each group of people and more respect towards one another. Whereas, oh, I have this, so I'm better than you, which is not accurate. But these types of situations will perpetuate that compassion that needs to come about and needs to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
And it's accelerating. Whereas in the past, it took a great deal of time for people of your populace to change governments and to change socialized systems and social systems.
Right.
It took a tremendous amount of time and a lot of blood.
Yes.
Lots of people died, killed, and they were providing a service to perpetuate this. So when people see other people being killed, like in that Ukraine country,
Mm-hmm.
it stimulates them to put the brakes on and say, this is enough.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, in this situation, it has to come to that for the individuals to recognize this.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the globe, the world,
Right.
is watching, eyes on.
Right.
And it's making the other political figures that do not have the best intentions for their population
Mm-hmm.
to be put on hold and step back and realize, only from their self-serving point of view, that their lives and families could be in detriment if things don't change.
Mm-hmm.
So it's causing fear in them. So it's almost like a transference of energy. So the fear that was in the populace, fear of the government, the military, things of that nature, are being shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that in some of these countries. And this is a slow moving in some countries, but in other countries it's greatly accelerated, like in that Ukraine country, because those individuals, from your standpoints and standards, don't have much.
Right.
But yet, because of their spirit and their energy and their desire, that goes put out in the universe. And the universe recognizes that. And the reason why they are doing so well is because it's coming from a good place.
Mm-hmm.
It's not coming from a place of, oh, we want this, we want that, we want monetary items such as cars, houses, things of that nature.
It's not self-serving.
Yes, it's not self-serving. And so typically those that are self-serving don't fare well in the end. They
Mm-hmm.
may have a good gain initially,
Mm-hmm.
but once the opposing side comes from a more benevolent place,
Mm-hmm.
a place of compassion and love and kindness, that will supersede that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And we just hope that the population can recognize that and not get, oh, how do we say, pulled into a place of despair because so much has been lost.
Right.
And the people of Ukraine have not gone down that rabbit hole.
Rabbit hole, yes. Okay.
Yeah, and they haven't bought into that. And this is something that side, the Russia side, did not anticipate.
Mm-hmm.
So we find this to be a good thing from our perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see the people of Ukraine being very brave, courageous, and being a model for the rest of the world to emulate.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Well, just to try to put this into context of what we've talked about before, this is, as you are explaining now, a very clear representation of the struggle between service to self and service to others.
Yes.
Which is the single most, if not one of the most significant decisions that are to come out of the third density experience.
Yes. And service to others emulates a much higher vibration than service to others, as you know, which is why service to others needs to conglomerate in large groups
Mm-hmm.
in order to pool their energy for their own advancement
Mm-hmm.
and for their own ideology and goals, but they're very short-lived.
Mm-hmm.
And so service to others, they radiate their own love and energy. And so the more they come together, the brighter they become, and which can overshadow service to self. And those individuals that are service to self that we just spoke about, they don't recognize that, but they can feel it.
Okay.
They can feel the disparity between the two sides.
They feel it as
an emotion.
Okay. So it stimulates self-generated fear, which is not what they seek. They're seeking energy in the source of their fear acquisition.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, and they hold on to that fear because it's familiar. And they also feel that if they let go and really feel their true selves and feel the creator, that they will dissipate.
Right.
And they don't recognize that on a conscious level because their level of awareness and consciousness is not there. But from an emotional and spiritual standpoint, they can feel that internally. And it's like, as we spoke about before, a teeter-totter, and they feel thrown off.
Okay.
And they can't quite identify why that is, which leads to more chaotic and erotic, eccentric behavior. So they become very uncomfortable.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, it's my understanding, and I offer this for your correction if need be, when the service to other portions of consciousness assemble, as you've described it, then their energy becomes logarithmic. So it's not just an addition of 1 and 1 equal 2. It magnifies the positive feeling, the love radiance that they experience, where the service to self can only at most hope for an addition of 1 plus 1 to equal 2, a greater energy conglomeration. Is that correct?
Yes. When service to others gathers, they are not in competition for a certain political status, a certain status within the family, a certain status within a town. That's not their objective. Whereas service to others, they just want to be on that ladder, going up, 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 and they don't care who.
You mean
they step
service to self?
Service to self. Excuse us. Yes.
Okay.
So they want to use that ladder to step over one another to gain more energy and power and control, but it's very short-lived.
It magnifies their competitive behavior as opposed to cooperative behavior.
Yes, they are not cooperative, but if they have a certain objective, if it's relatively large, for example, an energy portal, they will somewhat work together to obtain that portal in order to allow more of their own in. So that's about the only time that they demonstrate service to others. But it's for their own benefit, because the more of them that come in, then the more battling can occur. And so that is about the only time that they are willing to combine forces, if you will,
Right.
energies, to allow more of them to come in.
Okay. Is that not short-sighted, because the more of the service to self that they invite into their cooperative or their assemblage, it magnifies the competition and often would diminish the ability of the lesser service to self to participate in the spoils of their ambition.
Yes. So they use one another.
Right.
So they have a common objective, and it's usually rather grandiose. And so we picture cows going to corral. They corral other individuals like them to come in to help facilitate their goal. But once that goal is attained, then they start competing about who takes the spoils of it.
Right.
And so then that creates more internal conflict within their own group. Whereas service to others, they have a common goal, whether it be water or helping humanity, things of that nature. They don't compete about who did what, who did better, who did the best. There's none of that. There's none of that. It's a common goal, just like service to self, but their objective is different. And once the objective is obtained, they share the responsibility of how it all came into fruition.
Okay. And talking about the tools that consciousness has in order to make this decision of choosing service to self or service to others, again, it comes back to awareness and self-awareness, does it not? So it emphasizes the fact that awareness is our discovery tool of what needs to be healed internally, as well as the healing tool itself.
Yes. And we wanted to touch upon this topic this morning. Families. Families are a tremendous stimulus to sway an individual one way or the other. And so people often question, why do I have this mom? Why don't I have this dad, brother, sister, etc.? And the reason being is that it helps propel individuals to make a choice. Now, whether they're conscious of that choice or not is incumbent upon them. However, on a soul level, that choice is being made by their decisions, actions, and interactions with others. And so if an individual has an interaction with or a relationship with another individual and it doesn't work out to their expectations, learning has still occurred. There might be hurt, which causes the individual to examine their feelings, their situation, their decisions. So it's a service. Whether a relationship is fruitful or unfruitful, each interaction causes the other individual to examine their feelings if they have the awareness to do so. Otherwise, they keep going on and on and on and on, repeating the same problem until they learn the lesson. And once the lesson is learned, then there's another lesson, as you know, and it's just one after the next. That's
Right.
the evolutionary process. And so that's how individuals learn, but individuals can't solely learn on their own. We picture the man sitting in a cave.
Right.
Okay. And that's good introspection. But further learning occurs when interacting with others and gauging your own feelings and awareness in situations that may or may not agree with that person. And so that's how they learn and grow. And so then once that individual has completed that interaction and the learning has occurred, then the next situation will be elevated, less uncomfortable, but still learning, still awareness. But many of your people get caught up in the same cycle of familiarity
Right.
with relationships that are not comfortable, but they feel comfortable with it because that's all they know.
Right.
So until they get past that, and mostly their hindrance is due to fear. So once they get past that, then they can move up to the next level, if you will, and have more awareness. That's the point when a lot of other relationships fall to the side because the individuals that they interact with don't understand why this person is now behaving in a certain fashion. Whether it's good or bad can go up the scale or down the scale. But the design is for the individual to move ahead and gain more awareness. And once that happens, the vibratory level of the individual changes. And then they attract people that are more of that vibratory level. So then they learn from each other.
Right.
And then once that learning has been incorporated, then they move on to the next level. And that's the best way we can describe it, like a staircase.
Right.
Where there's, like, each step has a certain threshold of learning before you can go on to the next one. And so once that happens, you can continue to climb those steps and continue your evolutionary journey. But it's very helpful if the individual has the awareness of as to what is occurring.
Right. And to put that in the context of stress, when we encounter an experience that is intended to provide us with a learning opportunity, and we are unhappy with that experience, that experience does not feel good to us, then that's stress. That's what we call stress. And when we continue the same behavior and continue to experience that same stress, then that becomes suffering. Is that correct in your perspective?
Not necessarily always suffering, but it does cause a certain uncomfort level within the individual. And things that occur in a human's life, for example, many times when people are unable to pause and reflect and take the time to be quiet,
Right.
because as we have spoken about before, the box, the TV,
Right.
the talking, that distracts from internal awareness. So the way that the universe tends to push somebody a little bit harder are things like car accidents, house distractions, loss of money, jobs, loss of children, loss of loved ones, things of that nature. Because when those events occur, they're very, we'll use her words, in your face, and they make people stop. They make people stop and say, what just happened?
Very challenging.
Very challenging, but it makes the individual stop. So the hamster wheel comes to a pause.
Okay.
And it provides the individual with an opportunity to take the time to reflect upon what just happened, why it happened, and how does that impact me. And that awareness only occurs when an individual is quiet and calm. And for many individuals, they need that abrupt stimulus to provide them the opportunity to recognize what just happened. And it's that pause that's necessary. And usually for people that are unaware, it requires something rather dramatic from your perspectives.
Right.
In order for them to have that opportunity to reflect and pause and say, what just happened?
Okay.
And why?
Right. All experience comes to us without emotion attached to it. In other words, no experience brings emotion. How we are, the condition that we are in at the time of the experience, is the resource that we use in order to interpret our experiences. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the nature of our interpretation is our reflection of how we are. And you had mentioned earlier the nature or the determinants of family that we choose to incarnate with, the body type, the social conditions of our incarnation, simply provide us with the opportunity to have a certain type of experience, which would provide us most efficient series of lessons, series of experiences that will provide us with that opportunity to learn what we need to learn to advance our spiritual growth. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's purposeful when we perceive that we are of a certain race, a certain skin color, a certain social status, the family that we incarnate into, the general environment geographically that we incarnate into, is all purposeful to provide us with a certain type of experience to advance our spiritual growth. Is that correct? Is that a suitable explanation or expansion of what we were talking about?
Yes. Each individual chooses their family members and where they incarnate. Friends are chosen prior to incarnation. Whether or not those friends change their initial intentions is up to the individual. That's an individual choice. But many people question how they end up in a certain geographical region. And we're going to shift topics here.
Okay.
And the reason why that is within your city, many individuals question how or why they ended up there. And the reason being is to raise the energy
Mm-hmm.
of Gaia
Right.
in that particular region because it's very heavy,
Mm-hmm.
very low.
Right.
And so circumstances present themselves to attract individuals into certain areas to elevate the consciousness of the area. Not so much as in, not so much interacting with other individuals, but just the mere presence of that individual on the land,
Mm-hmm.
and then interacting with other individuals that come from different portions of your country.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why people end up in different locations.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes people that are service to self are attracted to portals that they gravitate towards on an energetic level.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many of those within your particular country, but around the world. This is not unique to your country.
Right.
And so, which is why you see in certain areas great conflict, because service to self and service to others tend to butt heads.
Right.
And so the attraction, so then those energy levels attract more and more of service to others, service to self. And so it escalates.
Mm-hmm.
It escalates until one energetic kind of ball, we see it like a ball, grows larger than the other one and can flip it one way or the other.
Right. It changes the hegemony of the area.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Is there something else that you would like to discuss this morning?
Nothing that we haven't discussed already.
Okay. Well, may I pose a question to you?
Mm-hmm.
We've discussed the influx of fourth density children into the population, and it is my understanding that an overwhelming majority of the children that are incarnating are of fourth density. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it's the intent that this higher consciousness younger population will serve as as models for the portions of the population that are still third density, including the incarnating children of third density. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And we are essentially experiencing both a third density and fourth density environment simultaneously. Is that correct?
That is correct, which is why many fourth density children
Mm-hmm.
see and feel things that their third density parents are unable to, or relatively more accurate to say, unaware of.
Mm-hmm.
They have the capacity, they just choose not to recognize it, and so they call their children autistic.
Mm-hmm.
Those children
Okay.
are very bright,
Okay.
very
Yes.
bright. They call them ADHD
Yes.
because
And they medicate them.
yes, that is a horrible thing to do. But those children are seeing things and feeling things that are real.
Mm-hmm.
However, their parents that are third density and older have shut that out.
Right.
So they deem their children to be mentally ill, physically impaired, exactly, sick.
Right.
And these children that are of a higher consciousness level don't do well in the traditional schools for that reason,
Mm-hmm.
because they see through the lack of awareness
Mm-hmm.
and the simplicity of the material that's being presented to them,
Mm-hmm.
and so they lose interest.
Mm-hmm.
So there needs to be more diversity, a differentiation in their educational layout,
Right.
classes.
Right.
And so that needs to evolve in order to accommodate their higher awareness and their higher intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And so when their parents, and we're sure this is not news to you, when their parents are thinking that their children are acting out, they don't want to do their homework, it's not just because they're uninterested, it's because they're not stimulated.
Mm-hmm. They're bored.
They're bored.
Yeah.
They're very bored. So their imaginations are so great that when they sit in a classroom setting, they're easily distracted, bored. They look out the window. They have thoughts, ideas, but they're fearful of conveying those thoughts and ideas for being labeled because they see what happens in the schools. And so they are fearful of expressing those ideas and thoughts within the home and within the school settings because they are fearful of those pills in a bottle.
Right.
They don't want that because then that tends to suppress their awareness. And a lot of that is driven by service to self because, service to self, because if their awareness continues to rise, then service to self is greatly threatened by disrupting the status quo.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Two of the principal characteristics of third density incarnation are the forgetting, and also in the earth experience, a veil that screens us from our, kind of regulates our capacity to communicate with the metaphysical world. Do these children, fourth density children, are they incarnating with the forgetting and the veil?
To a certain degree.
Okay.
The veil is much thinner, which is why many of the thoughts and ideas and things that they see make sense to them, but when they express it to others, the others think, as we just mentioned, think that they have some sort of mental impairment, but this is not true.
Okay.
And so these children are trying to reconcile the two because they look up to the parents and the teachers, but yet they see a different side, which is higher consciousness. And so they have a difficult time reconciling the two. So they choose not to speak about it because they don't want to get in trouble for basically speaking the truth. But because it's not recognized, it becomes a very strange dichotomy for them to balance.
Okay. And the forgetting, is that as complete as it is in a third density incarnating individual?
The forgetting is far more heavy in third density, whereas in fourth density, it's much lighter.
So it's probable that these children will be, as they mature, will gain greater remembrance of their previous participation in creation?
Yes, they're born with it.
Okay.
They can recognize it from when they're first born.
Okay.
And before they incarnate, it's almost like they float about and they decide which mother, father they choose to go into the womb. And they decide that from the other side. They decide that based upon which individual parent or parents they could provide the most service for. So they are providing a tremendous service for their parents.
Right.
But once they come into the womb, a lot of that awareness is diminished.
Okay.
Not completely, but they choose the mother figure who will get impregnated. And so they choose that mother figure to help her along her evolutionary path, which is why so many children have conflict with their mothers and fathers, but it's to provide a service to kind of jolt the parent into more awareness.
Okay.
So.
Well, in my understanding of a third density incarnation begins with a graduated opening of their metaphysical chakras, which allows a planned increase in their awareness. In other words, it's my understanding that during infancy, there's essentially the first metaphysical chakra is activated at approximately 18 months or 2 years. Then the second is elevated, which triggers behavior that we call the terrible twos. And then the third metaphysical chakra is activated around puberty. Is that same schedule applicable to the fourth density children?
The fourth density children skip the first chakra. They already have it.
All right. So when they're first born, then their first two chakras are open and active.
Yep.
Okay.
because they have the awareness and they're born with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So they will, in the course of their maturing, will automatically open the third and the fourth chakra. Is that correct?
Yes, at a young age.
Okay. But in third density, the difference is that the individual must assume responsibility for energizing and opening the fourth chakra.
Yes.
Okay.
So in third density, it's incumbent upon them to open up all their chakras if they have the awareness. So they're given a tremendous stimuli. It's
Right.
generally more than one event. And so it's incumbent upon them to recognize it. However, many of them do not.
Right.
Which is why they come back over and over and over and over.
Exactly.
For more impetus in order to open those chakras. And each time they come back, the stimulus is greater.
Mm-hmm.
So they might be born, for example, in your country in a nice home.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't get it, they will come back in a lesser developed country where they are forced to open up the first and second chakra by having to find food, housing, water. And so that will automatically open up those chakras, but they need that stimulus in order to do that, which Gaia definitely provides the atmosphere for those events to occur.
And the chakra system that we're talking about opening incrementally is the metaphysical chakra system, not the incarnate chakra system. Is that correct?
Yes, they kind of go together.
Right.
So in order to open up the first and second chakra, you need a stimulus if you're not aware. And so a lack of resources will tend to do that, and then it goes up the chakra system.
The stimulus is provided to the incarnate chakra system and is reflected in the metaphysical chakra system.
Yes, yes, the two blend together.
Right. Okay. We're experiencing a melding. I'm not sure how to describe the cohabitation of a third density environment and a fourth density environment simultaneously, but can you determine, is it the plan that these will continue for the full duration of a third density cycle as a shared environmental experience, or is there a point that is planned that they will separate and become their own independent environments?
Yes, the two are occurring at the same time presently. There will come a point where it will separate. The third density experience will become much smaller, and with less of the populace present as they move to fourth density, but this will take time.
Right.
And so this will not occur, as you say, overnight, but there will be a split.
Okay.
And so that is incumbent upon each individual to make that choice.
Right.
Whether they want to stay status quo or if they want to move forward. And most individuals do not have the awareness to make that differentiation, but on a soul level it will be made. And so it's incumbent upon each soul to determine which way they want to go, and either way is fine. There's no wrong answer.
Right.
If an individual wants to stay within the third density, they will stay there if they're comfortable, and then once they feel that they've learned the lessons, had enough, then they will move to the fourth.
Okay. All right. Very good. That answers a lot of my questions.
Okay, we're going to let her go.
Thank you.